Hey guys, this is GamerCow. Welcome to another episode of the Pokemon Trade Card Game History Series. We've taken a bit of a break, partly real life stuff, mostly because, the new Pokemon games came out, so we were more invested in doing that. Also, Silver Tempest released, so I've been playing a little bit of that too. So, yeah, there's been quite a bit that we've done outside of this thing, and we're finally going to get back into it. We're into the 2010 format now. We do not have a rotation. This is one of the very few times in the history of the game where this actually happens. Actually, I think it was only just recently in the Sword Shield sets that this happened otherwise, so it's kind of crazy. But yeah, we have all of the cards from Diamond Pearl on still, so we're actually going to have a DP Arceus format as well, which is really interesting. And yeah, there's 153 cards in this one, plus 4 promos. A lot of stuff to go through. I don't necessarily remember all of the cards here as well, because I'll be honest, it's been a few weeks since I've actually looked at the full set. So even though this one isn't as impactful overall as the last two sets, it's really hard to be more impactful than Rising Rivals. Even though that's the case, we do still have a lot to go over here, and I'll probably end up going over some stuff I shouldn't, but oh well, we'll just have to get to it as we do. So, yeah, Supreme Victors, there's a fair few of these cards which are like, they're not reprints, obviously, because we don't tend to get that too often in regular stuff, it's always in promos, but there's a lot of cards that get cut from sets. You see this a lot nowadays, and it tends to blend, lead itself to stuff like Fusion Strike, where the set is so ridiculously bloated because there's a ton of, side set cards that we never get, and then just get pushed into one set. This one has a fair few of those. The infamous Arcanine is in here as well. Sad days for Arcanine lovers, because this is, for its time period, one of the worst cards of all time. Honestly, this would have been passable to potentially good because of Overrun's effect here. This would have been passable in the very first set of the game, but even that set, I believe the Arcanine in that set was just actually better than this. It had more HP, it could do 80 damage for its attack, and it's just like, yeah. The only thing this has going for it is the Overrun. That's something that you couldn't really do very well in the base sets, but like, just god, why? Absolutely stupid. So, let's go over the trainer card stuff first, because that's usually the interesting bit there. There aren't very many of them, so this won't take too long to go through. Battle Tower is a stadium that if you level up from hand, you get to heal 4 damage counters off the Pokemon you leveled up. Kinda cool. I don't know how relevant that's really going to end up being. We don't have a ton of good healing in the format, so that can help. But the problem is that just, you've got to have chip damage on you basically at that point, and that's not usually going to happen. So, I don't know, it's like, it could avoid two-shot stuff, but SP decks don't want to play it because you can just Poke-turn, and any non-SP deck that's using level X's, how often is this even going to happen? Maybe once, if that. It's just not really too likely, so yeah. Champion's Room is a fantastic card that won't see play because of the nature of the format. The retreat cost of each SP Pokemon in play is 1 colorless less. If you know that you're not going to play against SP, this card is insane because it gives stuff like the Blaze in this set 0 retreat, it gives your regular Garchomp and Luxray 0 retreat, even Gallade level X you would get 0 retreat on, which is really, really good. There's a lot of stuff that it can benefit, but not every SP benefits from it, as obviously one, because anything that's got a heavier retreat cost than that still has to pay, and also the majority of the format at the time was SP decks, and the opponent would get the benefit as well, so most players chose not to facilitate that. So, bit of a shame. We'll revisit this concept with Sky Arrow Bridge, and that will actually see play. So, yeah, good card, just reciprocal in a format which is dominated by, the thing that it hits. It's just not quite there. Cynthia's Guidance. This is very similar to Aquapolis's Forest Guardian, I believe, except that one shuffled your deck before you looked at the top 7. for reasons I never quite understood that, but whatever. Yeah, you look at the top 7 of your deck, you choose one card from there and put it into hand, the rest go into the deck. It's a bit weak as far as supporter effects go, but it has one use exactly in a couple of sets time, right? There's actually a couple of types of card which are really hard to search right now. One of them is tool cards, so next set with Expert Belt, this could potentially search that if you really need it for the turn. The other is double colorless energy, because special energy are almost never searchable. That's why the Archeops in the Silver Tempest is so good, because accelerating special energy is incredible. They are obviously more powerful than basic energy, so yeah, searching DCE for Garchomp C and whatnot would be very helpful. We'll get to that in a sec. Cyrus's Initiative is a very interesting card. I have not managed to actually use this one yet, but I could see this being really good for ability-focused evolution decks. You flip 2 coins, and if either of them are heads, per heads that you flip, you look at the opponent's hand and take a card from that hand to the bottom of their deck. So this is really good against the SP decks for picking up their power sprays and putting them to the bottom of the deck so you can guarantee that you'll get stuff off. There's a decent engine that you could use here for this, and if it wasn't for the fact that I favor consistency in my build for this week, I probably would actually play a copy of this because I could facilitate it with Sableye. Sableye letting you discard a supporter out of the deck and use its effect as its attack means that you could snipe their, especially turn 1, if you've already got enough basics down, you could snipe their supporter card that they're going to use. That's, snipe the Cyrus's Conspiracy, and it'd be great. So yeah, really good card, just I haven't built a deck that uses it yet. Give it time, it's in the format for a while. Night Teleporter is a meme of a card, but there is exactly one exceptionally dirty use for it that we may see, but we've been keeping the deck hush because it's a war crime. Let's just put it that way. You flip a coin as an item card, and if heads, you put all of your other cards in hand back on top of your deck. Then you get any one card out of your deck to go with. So you lose, you lose the rest of your hand, but you get to take any one card out of your deck and put it into hand. There is an Executor for Mysterious Treasures that for 0 energy lets you shuffle both players' hands back into their deck, and then each player draws however many cards the opponent had in their hand for the effect. So if you drain your hand down to 0, the opponent doesn't have a hand going into their turn, and they have to just top deck out of it. Exceptionally dirty, absolutely a war crime, but this card can facilitate it, because if you flip heads, you only have one card in hand, you'll pick a playable card because you search for anything. If tails, it's -1 card out of your hand, so it's actually fine, right? You're getting closer to the 0 no matter which way around. So, disgusting card in that exact one deck, absolutely useless otherwise. Palmer's Contribution is Night Maintenance +2 technically. Search your discard pile for up to 5 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards, show them to opponent, shuffle them back into deck. Really, really good card. Night Main is a relative staple. Not every deck plays it, but I feel like every deck should play at least one. I really like this despite being a supporter, because we do have Claydol and Yuxi in the format right now. So we have access to draw cards which aren't just like supporters. So I do like it in that aspect, but also I really like the fact that this is a supporter because it means it is reusable with Versus Seeker, our reprint for this set. We didn't get to... I don't even know if I could say it's fair that we didn't get to use VS Seeker. We just didn't end up fitting it into decks most of the time in Gen 3. I'm still not sure why, because this card is absolutely insane, right? An item that gets a supporter card from your discard pile is ridiculous. But we will be seeing it this weekend because the deck that I have built is set up for this. It's Sableye lets you discard supporters out of your deck and use the effect of that supporter as the effect of Sableye. And that just pairs perfectly with VS Seeker, being able to pick up whatever supporter you want out of the discard. It's absolutely crazy good. The problem is that we're getting item lock in a more reasonable fashion than just Dialga Deafen in the next few sets. So yeah, that could be a bit tricky. But it's absolutely ludicrous that this is back in the format, and for sure we're going to see it abused this time. Really, really good card. Before we keep going, the level X is the main thing to look at next, but I'm going to start bringing the regular forms down here, because I think you need to talk about the regular stuff with the level X's at the same time. So we'll start bringing them down here. It makes it less like nice looking up here, so that's why I didn't do it initially. But the more I think about it, the more I go, yeah, we should. Garchomp C is uncommon, by the way. That's actually kind of wild when you consider the level X aspect of it here. So we have that, and then Staraptor is at the top as well. Yeah, like all the other ones are rares or hollows or something, and then Garchomp C, for whatever reason, just an uncommon. It's got a promo print too, actually, which is pretty good for it, so, like the level X, that is. So this was very readily available, and definitely influenced its popularity a little bit, but even without, it would have been insane. So Absol, I really wanted to make this work. When we were looking through the sets before we started Gen 4, this was one of the cards that I looked at, mostly the level X. This was one of the cards I looked at going, oh my god, this looks ridiculous, I want to use it, and it's Absol, it looks so cool, right? Unfortunately, having played the last two formats and seen the SP decks that are available, this guy's nothing special in the end. It's a shame. The regular one, Feint Attack Snipe 20 for a Dark is pretty decent at the very least. Doomuse, this kind of attack basically never works. I think the only time it's ever seen play was Trev Noir with its GX attack, and that was mostly because you drained all the energy off the opponent's active as well. So it made it hard to retreat. But this kind of attack is not super good. You return all the energy from Absol to the hand, and then if they stay active, then they get KO'd next turn. Oh no, like that's just never going to do anything. Also, the opponent could just evolve out of it. So yeah, it really isn't, or level up, just isn't going to happen. It's expensive too, even with an energy gain, that's 2 energy that you've got to bounce back. It's fine, but yeah, no, not really. I'm coping if I say that's fine. 100 HP on the level X is a little bit low. Most of the level X's for SP Pokemon are 110 or 120, so that's a bit of a shame. Finding weakness is a bit of an annoyance because it means that you're easily KO'd by like Machamp, who already donks on other SP decks anyway. Dark doesn't hit anything for weakness really, but it does at least have special Dark energy, so you could do plus 10 damage with that, which is one of the reasons I thought this could be good, because its attack for 1 Dark and an energy gain does 60 if you discard a card out of your hand. Discard synergy isn't, like discard cards aren't very common in this era, so that effect could actually be seen as a bonus rather than a detriment, because you often do have excess cards that you would rather not like get shuffled back in with a looker or something. So in theory that actually could work as a good bonus. And it does 70 if you've got a special Dark on, which is good. The next guy's going to do more than that without having to have a special energy though. Darkness Send is also kind of interesting. When you level up the Absol in the first place, you flip 3 coins, and for each head you put the top card of the opponent's deck into the Lost Zone. So a little bit of milling. It's not really strong enough milling to be honest, but it's cute nonetheless. Idea is really cool, but I just don't think it's going to get there, to be honest. Especially not when Blaziken is in the format, because oh my goodness, this Blaziken is insane. So 80 HP, it's like 10 less in both this and the level X, 10 less HP than the Infernape, but it's cheaper attacks, so that does help quite a lot. Luring Flame for a fire, so you can't energy gain this, but that's fine because Cyrus can still get you the basic. For 1 fire, you swap the opponent's active with one of their bench and burn the new active. You do have to force them to switch. You can't, because it's the new defending Pokemon, you can't just burn with this. You do have to force something in. But that's still insane. I mean, gusting effects are obviously powerful. Even on attacks, they're pretty good. The fact that you get to choose what comes in is really strong. And you can use this on a Claydol on the bench, and then they can't use their power because they've got a special condition on them. Vapor Kick is also kind of neat. For a Fire Colorless or Fire plus energy gain, 30 damage, 60 if the opponent plays Water Pokemon. There aren't really many Waters that are going to be played now. I mean, we've banned all the actual decks for Water, but that could still maybe come in if somebody wants to try Palkia for some reason. I think they're just going to get Lux Raid out of the game, but, you know, it is what it is. And then the FB goes up to 110 HP. That actually kind of doesn't matter too much. You're still going to die to about the same attacks here because of Jet Shoot. 1 fire, 1 colorless to do an insane 80 damage. Ridiculously aggressive amount of damage here when you consider that SP decks can also play Crobats and whatnot. However, for the drawback is you take 40 more damage yourself next turn. So it's like Lucario's Close Combat, but it takes less energy. So that kind of shows you the power creep from the early sets of Diamond Pearl, right? Lucario was a stage 1 level X. It has the same amount of HP actually, and its attack that did exactly this, almost, you know, you took 30 instead of 40 more damage, whoop-de-doo. That took 2 fighting and a colorless, and this can be charged up in a single turn because you go Cyrus's Conspiracy for fire energy gain, and it's ready to go. It's absolutely insane. Burning Spirit is also a neat power that is a little bit hard to take advantage of in a vanilla Blaze deck, but there are ways that you could do it. Any burned Pokemon in play takes 40 more damage. Only one of these can apply, so you can't like, you know, get 2 level X's in play and do plus 80. That would be stupid. But there is a Blaziken that auto burns, and there's a Magmortar in this set actually which can burn and confuse when you evolve into it. So there are ways of taking advantage of this. It just makes the deck a bit less, a bit clunkier, less consistent. So yeah, excuse me. Getting choked up here. Charizard's a funny card. I wouldn't call it good because we don't have energy acceleration that's good enough for it, but it's interesting. If you can flip a bunch of heads, Flame Jet is really fun. 1 fire, 1 colorless, so energy gainable. And if you flip heads, it snipes 40 to one of the opponent's Pokemon. That's pretty strong. The Charizard level X goes up to 120 HP, which is pretty big. 100 HP for a basic SP is already really big though. And the level X here, it can absorb energy from your board as much as you want for a turn, so that's good, because it takes a massive 2 fire and 3 colorless to do its Malevolent Fire attack. That attack is going to one-shot almost everything. It's 150 damage that it does, so that's really, really strong. But if you flip Tails, you discard every energy on the Charizard. So a wrong coin toss is just going to end your game, right? Because even with an energy gain, this is 2 fire and an unreleased double colorless energy. Right now, you know, even when we get DCE, that's a ton of energy to do. And we technically have Typhlosion that can accelerate to the bench, and then Charizard can absorb it. So, like, that's cool, I suppose. But you would need a lot of Typhlosion out, and Typhlosion itself is not a good attacker, at least the one we have at the moment. And also, yeah, it's a lot to try and facilitate what is ultimately a one and done sort of attack. If you can just keep flipping heads, this is insane, but I just don't see it, to be honest. One of the ways that you might want to try and use for accelerating to it is the Electivire level X, but that's a bad idea that we'll get into as we go. The regular Electivire for an energy gain, or just a colorless, discard up to 2 energy from your hand and then draw 2 cards for each one you discarded. This is pretty interesting. There was a Magmar that did this back in Team Rocket Returns, which I did use once in a Bomb Tar deck, but that was not amazing, to be honest. That was the less consistent version of that deck anyway. Electric Current is a bad attack, like Lightning double colorless to do 40, and you have to move a Lightning away from the Vire. It doesn't have the same move power that Charizard does, so just not really. The level X is interesting. 120 HP is pretty big. Powerful Spark is a good attack. It's the same attack that Verdant Wind is on Leafeon. I think it's... No, is it Verdant Dance? Probably Verdant Dance, the Leafeon level X. It takes another energy, but energy gain can mitigate that. For Lightning double colorless, 30 plus 10 for every energy that's on all of your Pokemon. So that's cool, because it also synergizes with Energy Recycle, the Pokepower that it has. Same power that was on Swampert level, Swampert EX that I played at the end of the Ruby Sapphire On format. It was really cool. At the cost of ending your turn, you can accelerate free of any energy card onto your Pokemon in any way that you like. This includes special energy, which is normally not possible to recover or, like, you know, accelerate. So that's really, really cool. The problem is it ends your turn if you use this power, and even if your power gets blocked by a spray, your turn still ends, which means that, yeah, this deck would, like, absolutely have to use Cyrus's initiative, and maybe you could make it work if you know that your opponent is not playing SP, right? But because SP decks are generally the played decks of the format, it's so unreliable to try and focus on this. So, also weak to fighting, that's not going to help because Machamp, right? So, yeah. Garchomp C is unassuming at the moment, but will be absolutely devastating in 2 sets time when we get double colorless energy. So again, only 80 HP, a little bit lame at the moment, but that's still fine. Claw Swipe for double colorless does 30, so 1 energy plus a gain. You can be hitting aggressive at the start of the game, which is pretty good. Earthquake for 3 colorless does 50 and 10 to all of your bench. That's kind of bad, but that's mostly a mitigatable downside because of the level X over here. You play Garchomp in an SP focused deck anyway. So this means then that once you level up into Garchomp C level X, you full heal all of your SP Pokemon. Yeah, any damage that you've taken, you just heal it off. It's absolutely stupid. Dragon Rush for 3 colorless is also extremely good. You discard 2 energy from the Garchomp C, and then snipe 80 on one of the opponent's Pokemon anywhere that you want. You can't Dragon Rush in consecutive turns, but that's enough damage to KO a Claydol on the bench. And you can't Unknown G around this because it is damage from an attack. So that's automatically absolutely absurd. The problem at the moment is we don't really have a way of getting 2 energy on this thing consistently enough. I know you can't use it in consecutive turns anyway, but the fact of your discarding 2 energy every time when we can't play upper energy because upper energy doesn't work on level X's, and we can't play double colorless because it doesn't exist yet, it means that this attack is a lot more situational than you would like, because how are you keeping enough energy in play to facilitate this? And the Garchomp regular is not strong enough to work around that disadvantage. So don't expect to see it just yet. Maybe Matt will surprise me and play it anyway, but don't expect to see it just yet. But when it comes out, it is going to be ludicrous. Just wait for it. Rayquaza is an interesting gimmick deck, if nothing else. 100 HP again, very big for basic here. Trash Burst, discard up to 5 energy from your hand and do 10 plus 10 for every energy you discarded for a single energy of itself, so you could energy gain this if you want. That's a lot of discards. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it like works with the Dragon Spirit ability body here, I guess. That's kind of cute. But yeah, that's super dangerous to rely on that, I suppose. Twister isn't really a good attack either, though. You, yeah, 3 colorless plus an energy gain to do 50, but if you flip 2 tails, it does nothing. Yeah, you can discard some energy from it, that's great, but that 2 tails to do nothing thing has messed me up in the past with Kingdra back from like Neo Revelation. So yeah, never happening. The level X here has 120 HP, so just a little bit more. That tends to be the case for most of these level X's. If it's active and gets damaged, but not KO'd, you can take an energy from your discard pile, put it on the Rayquaza. That's cute, I suppose. And Final Blow Up for a ridiculous Water, Psychic, Fighting, Colorless cost. It can't even be metal, so you can't even do like Regigigas fun stuff with it. I don't know what you do that way, but still. 200 damage, so it literally will KO anything in the format. You have to discard all the energy after you use it though, so that already seems really bad. But if you don't have a hand, you don't have to discard, and that's where the gimmick comes in for it. I have no idea how on earth you would make a deck with this actually work. Apparently it involves like 20 energy or something, which is stupid like that. So I don't know how you would make this work, but if you don't have a hand, you just get to do 200 every turn that this stays in play. Problem is, I think it's going to get two-shot most of the time anyway, so it's not going to stay in play that much, but still. It's very funny though, and I would like to see it just because of that, but I don't think we're going to. Nobody has it on radar at the moment, and it's not a great deck anyway. Finally, we have Staraptor as far as the level X's go here. The regular Staraptor is nothing too special. I mean, I guess Whirlwind could be kind of annoying when we get double colorless, but it's not really too great. Yeah, Quick Attack doesn't do a lot of damage either, so the regular Staraptor is not worth anything. But the level X is really interesting. Once you do your turn before you attack, you may search your deck for a supporter card, show it to the opponent, put it into hand. Really, really good. Defog is also interesting here, free colorless or DC plus gain when we get access to that. 40 damage, but you can discard a Stadium in play and do 70 instead. Stadium cards are not very common at the moment, to be honest, partly because Flygon is such a big problem against him. But this would one-shot Flygon if you... well, I mean, you'd have to have Lucario for the regular Flygon. The level X just gets one shot naturally, and that's kind of cool. I don't think you'd play this as like an anti-colorless sort of thing though. And the problem is, it's weak to Lightning, which means it's weak to Luxray, which means Luxray one-shots it for, you know, the single energy and can gust it up. So, the effect is obviously really strong. You can build your deck around using this and it'd be great. But it's just a collection of incorrect attributes on here as well, I think. The lightning weakness really kills it. The fact that it's a level X means you've got to go in the active slot or rely on level max, which is on a coin flip, so that's not super great. And yeah, it's too much. I love Staraptor. This is the closest it ever gets to be having a really good card. But it's just not good in the format, unfortunately. Lightning has a couple of really strong attacks now, so yeah. Also, funnily enough, we get like secret rare reprints of the... We're continuing to get some reprint stuff. These are the... Oh, what was it? The Power of One, the 2000... yeah, the 2000 movie. The promos that came out from that. Yeah, very strange that we get those here. Interesting artwork for it too. Obviously, they don't do anything in this format. But it's just kind of cool, I suppose. They'd be good collector's items, right? We get some shiny Pokemon down here as well. There's more support, if you will, for this like no cards in hand thing. If you have no cards in hand, this Milotic just doesn't take any damage, which is kind of cool. It needs to as well, because for 2 water and colorless it only does 80, but it does 10 less for every damage counter on the Milotic. There's technically a deck you could build with this, but it's just never going to be worth it. And then the other two, Relicanth, no, like it makes the opponent pay more to retreat next turn, but no, because they're just going to like Poke Turn or play a switch card or whatever, so yeah, not really good there. There's a good Relicanth in this set though, so there's that. And then Yanma. This is definitely a consideration for what Yanma you would want to play in the Yanmega deck. Ultimately, we've decided that the U-turn Yanma is better though, so yeah, we're not playing this one either. But it's still very cool. Finally, before we get up to the rest of the main cards in the set, promos, the Magnezone, if you are playing a Magnezone deck, might be okay, because you can discard Lightning and a Metal Energy to do 120 for 4. It's on Lightning instead of Metal, which means that you're not weak to Blaziken with this exact one. That might matter, and 120 is good output for that deck, because the Magnezone deck does tend to struggle with damage output a little bit. So, not a terrible card. I don't think it's good enough to see play though. Magnezone has a lot of good versions in this this format, so yeah. Probopass is just funny because if the opponent plays a ton of Pokebodies, then this can punish them. Otherwise, it's really bad, so nobody cares. And the Carnivine, there's a gimmick deck you could build with Ariados that would give a lot of retreat cost to all of the opponent's Pokemon, but it's never going to work out. You'd need a lot of Ariados down, and even then, most Pokemon have got like 1, maybe 2 at most in their retreat cost, so you're doing 60, 70 at absolute. Like, if you're stretching it, you could maybe get up to 80 damage if they've got a 2 retreat cost. That's just not happening. That requires all 4 Ariados in play too, which means you don't have Claydolls and stuff, so yeah. The actual good one here is Toxicroak. This lets you, well, its body is pretty, its power is pretty cool. Like if it's your active and you flip heads, you can just bounce it back to the hand, which means if you start with it, it's not necessarily the worst, because you could like call energy at turn 1, so you could get your stuff down, and then bounce it back to hand and actually get your proper stuff in without using a Poketurn. That's pretty cool. It's mostly here because it's a fighting type with Poison Revenge though. This is one of the reasons why Electivire and stuff was not so good as well. Not just Machamp, but this, because this for just a Psychic and an Energy gain, so Cyrus gets this going very easily. 60 damage if one of your Pokemon was KO'd by damage last turn, and Poison. But the 60 is mostly it, so all of the, like Luxray and any other Fighting Weak SP is going to get one-shot by this on the Revenge hit. It's got a high end and average HP for an SP as well. 90 is really solid, so it can be hard to kill back in Revenge. And yeah, it's for a single energy plus an energy gain, which you might be able to recycle with Leap Away too. Really, really good card. This is a one-of in basically every SP deck from here on out, so expect to see it. Alright, and now we get to the rest of the stuff in here. So, where do we even... I mean, we begin from the top, right? Drifblim is funny if you've got 3 or less. If the opponent's down to like 3 or less prizes left, this has 120 HP, and it actually does hit weakness on sniping, which is very rare. Shadow Ball, I think, is one of the only times that tends to happen. Problem is, its Psychic is not the greatest to hit. I mean, Uxie and Azelf are very common, but they also survive this with 10 HP, so you need to pair it with like a Crobat or something. You might be able to get some good hits with it, but it's expensive too. Psychic, Colorless, and Energy Gain. Nah. Garchomp is considerable when DCE comes out. DCE and Expert Belt really make this an actual potential threat. If it's your active and is damaged by an attack, you bounce an energy from the attacker back into the opponent's hand. So it can be a little bit hard to keep attacking this thing. And that's kind of cool. It's got 130 HP, no retreat is nice too. Guard Claw for the double colorless energy is 40 and take 20 less damage next turn, so it makes it very hard to KO. Expert Belt next set is going to make this do a respectable 60 as well, so that ends up being pretty good. And then Speed Impact, 120 for free energy, minus 20 for every energy that's on the defending Pokemon. Kind of depends what you're going against. This could still actually be really powerful. If you're up against like a Dialga or something that's going to have free energy on it, this isn't going to do anything. But if you're up against typical SP decks, will only have like 1 or maybe 2 energy at most. And if they've only got 1 energy on them, you're still doing 100. That's a lot of damage. So yeah, Speed Impact is pretty cool too. So yeah, not a bad card. Magmortar, I mentioned this one before. When you evolve into Magmortar, it burns and confuses the opponent's active. This is the same as a Flareon EX, actually, that I played way back in you know, that old Delta Species format. The problem is, we don't have Surprise Time Machine at the moment, which means there's no recycling this. And the Magmortar itself doesn't do anything special. Snipe 30 for a Fire Colorless, okay. 60 for a Fire Double Colorless, and you can move a Fire from Magmortar to one of your bench. No thank you, not really very good. There is a level X that we can still use for Magmortar, but I don't think it's good enough to justify using this. And if you're going to have to Super Scoop this in order to reuse it, I just don't see it. Metagross is a funny meme card. Every Pokemon in play has minus 20 HP whilst this is out, so technically it's a 110 HP stage 2, which is not very high. That's fine. Geo Impact is cute, I suppose, but most decks are very multi-type at the moment, so it's not actually going to hit very much. Yeah, 60 for 2 metal on a colorless is just not good. And yeah, excuse me. Scratchy ear. It's always the worst, isn't it, when you've got stuff on. Anyway, doesn't matter. Metagross, yeah, funny for the minus HP thing. You might take some cheeky prizes, but it's not really good enough. Regigigas FB was potentially used sometimes as a counter to Garchomp and whatnot. It's a very cool deck. I think it just takes a little bit too much energy to play. The real attack here is Rainbow Lariat. 4 colorless energy to do 20 for every different type of SP that you have in play. If you had upper energy technically still works on this, but you do have to be behind on prizes. So yeah, like double colorless clearly helps this a lot, and double colorless for drain punch is quite nice. You could, with expert belt in the next set, you could do drain punch for 50. But the problem is if you use expert belt, you can't use energy gain, so you've still got to take free energy for that. So maybe it's just a little bit clunky, but it has a relatively okay healing tack on it, and Rainbow Lariat could do up to 120 damage if you play the whole gamut of special SPs and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know, it's cool. I think it's a bit too expensive, but it's still cool. Rhyperior has a rage attack. If this wasn't on stage 2, we're going to see this later of Reshiram and Zekrom and whatnot. Outrage is insane. It's the same sort of thing. But that's on a basic, so that makes it much easier to use. But still, Raging Drill is interesting, and Deep Scrap lets you discard the top 3 cards of the opponent's deck if you KO with it. I guess that's fun. Swampert. There's a Swampert in format that lets you move fighting or water energy from your, I think it's from your bench to your active. It's either that, it's one way round. I think it's bench to active. So yeah, having a second Swampert in format, maybe this ends up being good. Who knows? Any damage done to Swampert by unevolved Pokemon is reduced by 20. That's already pretty strong, to be honest. It's on a water attack too, so kind of cool. Dragoff, a little bit expensive here, fighting water, double colorless even, to do 30. You can force the opponent to come in. This is the same thing that's on Regigigas that we played before, but that was for free colorless and on a basic. This is too expensive as stage 2. Pushover is an intriguing attack. Water triple colorless, 60 plus 10 for every fighting energy that's on the Swampert, so they really do want you to mix and match here. If you had like a multi or a rainbow energy on this thing to do the water cost, you could do 100 for 4, which is not amazing, but certainly could be played. It is water too, so, and water but not weak to lightning, which is pretty key. So yeah, grass doesn't tend to be super great as an attack type, so yeah, maybe there's some potential. Venusaur over here, you remove all special conditions from grass Pokemon, so I guess that could be like anti-burn from the Blaziken and whatnot is interesting. If it has a ton of damage counters on it, then for one grass you do 30 plus burn, confuse, and poison. I think the idea of this is you're supposed to tank with the Shaman level X to give it 180 HP, so that you, even with 8 damage counters on you, you have 100 HP left. That's neat, I suppose. 2 grass and 2 colorless, pretty ridiculous attack cost, even with Sceptile. This might be a bit hard to set up. 40 damage plus 40 for every special condition the opponent has on them. So the other idea, I suppose, would be to be like Magmortar plus Venusaur and do like 120 plus the burn potential. That's great and all, but my god, that's so much energy to do that. It's just impossible to charge up. Anything that takes more than 2 energy in this format is almost unusable, so yeah. Unless it has acceleration like Yanmega over here. So this is probably the deck that Sai's going to end up bringing, because it's a very interesting one. Yanmega's got no retreat, and if it's your active Pokemon, you can search your discard pile for a grass energy and attach it to itself. So that fuels its wind return attack. For 2 colorless, you can return all of the grass energy from Yanmega to the hand, and do 20 plus 20 for every energy you returned. So if you can keep discarding the grass energy to turn after turn, this will let you do 60 per turn for 1 energy attach, which is kind of nice. But because it's got 0 retreat, you can bank an energy on the Yanmega. Like, you can speed boost, switch to a benched Yanmega, speed boost to that one, attach to that one then attacks, but your bench one has an energy as well. So you can start building up towards doing the basic 70 for 2 grass, 2 colorless here. It's a little expensive, it's weak to lightning, so Luxray is a bad time for it, but it's very interesting if nothing else, and I do think the idea of it, it works, but it's maybe not the strongest thing you could do. But it is very cool, and if you play Shaman level X, you can tank with the Shaman. Seed Flare could also potentially accelerate a bunch of energy at that point, so yeah, there's some cool stuff that the deck can do. It's just maybe not the most competitive, but it's very fun, and sometimes that's what matters more. Arcanine G over here, ironically, not even ironically, this is just objectively better than the Arcanine that's in the set, the regular one. Very silly. It's still not very good though. Overrun is very expensive for what it does. The fact of it needs 2 energy to do that with an energy gain, just 40 snipe 20, not strong enough really. There's legendary birds in this set, none of them are any good, so we'll just move on. Butterfree, yeah, if the opponent's got a Pokebody, then Butterfree tears 60 instead of 30, which is nice, because it's like 30 plus poison, but that's for grass double colorless, so even with energy gain, it's still 2 energy. That's nowhere near enough damage for that. Sorry, Butterfree. Volcanic Ash is cool, I suppose, for Camerupt over here. Does a lot of damage, but it also takes a lot of energy, so not really worth it. The Camerupt G, in theory, is good, but how are you getting enough energy on this thing? Earth Power is a good attack, at the very least. 60 for free colorless and an energy gain. Maybe with DC, if you needed a fire attacker in your SP deck, but didn't want to commit to fire energy, you could see this being used, because that potential for bench damage is quite nice as well. But yeah, just not really going to work out too well here. Chimecho is an interesting heal card. You could maybe use this with like in an SP deck with Alakazam instead of using the Garchomp, because heal free for each of your Pokemon for 1 colorless. That's cool, I suppose. Yeah, not really too great, but still, it's there. There's a Psychic type Baltoy in this deck, in this set, which actually is a little bit relevant sometimes, because yeah, some decks, like that Executor deck, the Execute can search for a Psychic basic, so that can actually help. So yeah, that's the most noteworthy thing this Claydol brings, is just, yeah, you could kill your own Pokemon with Anti-Magic though, that's neat, right? No. Cordon doesn't do enough damage, and you have to flip with the discard, whatever. Dewgong is resistant to fire and water Pokemon. That's cool, I suppose. Does a lot of damage to fighting specifically, but nah, still not very good. Dodrio is just in the wrong neighborhood right now. Yeah, once per turn, draw a card on the stage 1. This effect is actually fine. Not the best, but it has been played in rogue decks before. But why use this when we have Claydol, right? Dusknoir FB is so close to being good. Its attack for Psychic Double Colorless does 10 for every SP that you have in your discard pile. That is so nearly there, but it's just too hard to get good numbers out of it, and it takes 2 energy as well. And I mean, the Dark Weakness is not even that bad, but it's still just it's too hard to get enough output from it. Why go through all of that effort and take 2 energy at a time in a format that doesn't really have acceleration for it? Yeah, it's just not quite there. Empoleon FB, not very good. I guess you do 60 for 2 if you played a supporter this turn, that's okay, but one of those is a colored energy, so bleh, I don't know. There's an Exploud that gives you no weakness on all your stuff. This kind of ability's never really been good though, so nobody really cares. Honchkrow is really good. Riot is an insane attack, 30 plus 10 for each Pokemon that isn't evolved in play, so this is a good like anti-SP card in SP decks. Because you're also not playing a ton of evolutions, right? Because you're playing an SP deck, but if the opponent is playing SP, then this just goes over 100 damage very easily. Darkness Restore is also interesting. If Honchkrow is active and the opponent's bench isn't full, then you can bench one of their discarded basics, so you can do more damage with Riot. So yeah, very, very good card if you expect SP to be the main thing in the format. And even if not, you could still do like 80 or maybe 90 with this if you have Special Dark on it. The cost is just a lot to ask for though. Dark Double Colorless is just a ton, so that can be tricky. Licky over here, not really very good. Return is a nice attack, but not for free colorless. Maybe with DCE you could see this. It does one-shot Garchomp C after all, like the regular one, so like maybe. I still don't think it's too great. I suppose you can attach, you can accelerate like fairly quickly with this thing though. So maybe there is like something to it, but this kind of accelerate one energy type of thing never really pans out. So yeah. There's a Soul Rock and Lunatone in this set that work together. I mean, shocker, right? Once during your turn before you attack, if you have Lunatone in play, you may look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put them back in any order. That's kind of cool. Lunatone from this Soul Rock also does like 30 damage for 2 colors, but 60 if you have a Lunatone in your discard pile. Then you shuffle that Lunatone back into the deck. So that's neat. The Lunatone is here, and if you have a Soul Rock in play, then you prevent all effects of attacks, including damage done to Lunatone or Soul Rock, by level X. So any deck that relies on them, say Blaze Ray, would have a bit of a hard time doing significant damage, because most of their attack power is in the level X's. Gravity Wave is also cute, but doesn't really do a whole lot here. 30 for Psychic Colorless, and 30 to each of the opponent's bench that doesn't have a retreat cost. If you could make it so that they don't have a retreat cost, that'd be cool. But other than Moonlight Stadium and hoping they play Psychics, that's not really going to happen. So, yeah, not really too impressed, to be honest. There's a few other like card stuff here. There's not really any there that's worth noting. Unfortunately, Mawile just doesn't have any good cards left here. Mr. Mime has got an inbuilt Focus Sash, which is kind of neat, I suppose. It does 60 for a Psychic Colorless if it's got 5 or more damage counters on it out of its 70 HP. But it also just can't get one-shot by any attack that does 70 or more damage. I'm pretty sure every deck really, I mean even Luxray does 60, right? So there's too many ways around that, to be honest. What else is even interesting? The Sandslash has got a kind of cool power. Once during your turn before you attack, you may look at the top 5 of your deck, choose as many fighting energy as you find there and put them into hand, and all other cards go back into the deck. That's cool, I suppose. It doesn't do a good attack, but still neat for the ability. Shedinja is pretty interesting, as it often is. Prevent all effects of attacks, including damage done to Shedinja by the opponent's Pokemon that have any Pokepowers or bodies. So this can shut down, I mean, Blaze Ray is another decent one to say. This really hurts that deck because they all have, and most SP decks really, all of their main guys rely on powers and bodies and whatnot. Its attack is fine if you play Crobats. 1 colorless to snipe 30 on one of the opponent's Pokemon that has damage on them, so that's cool. Dialga is really good against this though, because it shuts the body off, so yeah, it's only passable in the end. There's a Wailord in this set. It's not quite as big as the previous one, but it still has 180 HP, so that's very fun, I suppose. I'm sure you could do some dumb stuff with that later. Breloom would be interesting, but it relies on the opponent having special energy on them, which is not always going to happen, so yeah. Chatot G is insane, even though I don't know if we're going to see this just yet. Disrupting Spy is really, really good in control decks. I'm a little bit worried about what Matt's going to bring because of stuff like this. When you bench the Chatot, you look at the top 4 cards of your opponent's deck and put them back in any order that you want. So yeah, this would be really, really strong to use after the Executor thing if they just don't immediately draw out of it. Search and Escape is also really crazy here. For no energy, search your deck for a trainer card, put it into hand, and then put Chatot G back on top of the deck and shuffle it in. Trainer card obviously is item nowadays, so it's not like the most diverse things you could get, but you could still pick up something like SP Radar in order to get your level X next turn. Tools are trainers, so you could pick up Energy Gain. That's kind of cool. Yeah, there's a lot of neat, or even just a Luxury Ball, so you could search for the Claydol that you need. That's also really good. So yeah, very, very strong card. Dragonite FB is one of the cards that you could use against Garchomp specifically when DCE comes out. For 3 colorless energy, it only does 20 damage, but if the opponent is an SP, it does 80 instead. So decks usually went either Ambipom G from the previous set, or this, in order to counter Garchomp in Luxchomp decks. So keep an eye on it later. It's too expensive at the moment, but it'll definitely be playable in the future. Maybe even just now you could get away with it, to be honest. I don't know. There's an Ivysaur here that you put the opponent to sleep when you evolve into it. That's good utility, I suppose. Just trying to think what else is here that might be interesting. There's a Marshtomp that when you have it on the bench, you can flip to put it active and then move any energy that your active had onto it if you want. That's kind of neat with the Swampert build, I suppose. Could be interesting. Ninjask doesn't do a lot this time. It doesn't have like the cast off shell stuff, so that's fine. There's Raichu. There's a level X Raichu is why it's worth noting if these actually do anything, but this one a little bit expensive for what it does, unfortunately. Relicanth is one of the other major cards in this set. For 1 fighting energy, you snipe 30 on one of the opponent's Pokemon for every tool and stadium that they have in play. This is really good against SP because they tend to have a ton of energy gains and whatnot down, right? So if they've just got 2 energy gain, you're sniping 60 on one of their Pokemon, which is pretty good. It's also fighting, so it kills Luxray if that's in the active. And yeah, SP decks don't really function without putting energy gain down, so you can probably get a pretty good Grand Swell off at some point against them. So that's neat. Otherwise, like I said, there's a Psychic type Baltoy, but that's about it there, really. And all of the other stuff is Prevos that aren't really too impactful here, I don't think. At least the Nincada has got Core for Family if you want to play Shedinja, I suppose. So that could get you Baltoy that you could Claydol with next turn. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Once again, this goes on for ages, but I mean, you've got to consider there's over 150 cards in this set, so there's going to be a lot to talk about, even if not all of the cards are actually good. I'm sure there's a couple of things that we could have maybe mentioned in here that says, like, fringe usables, potentially what Raticate to get a, trainer out of your discard. That's kind of neat, I suppose. Yeah, lots of fun stuff to go over with this. But as far as like actual impactful cards go, there's not as many as the last time round. But Blaziken is going to be insane. Garchomp is going to be insane even if not right now. The Versus Seeker Palmer is really good. Cyrus is a nice one. And yeah, this Garchomp is probably going to get played at some point as well. And yeah, Honchkrow is neat. Chatot is neat. And good stuff. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get back into this for at least a little bit. I would really like to finish off Gen 4 before, before we take any more sort of breaks off of this. But we'll see how schedules go. Matt is changing as well soon, so hopefully we can get this done in a good amount of time, and we'll have fun doing it. So yeah, look forward to the games coming shortly, and we will see you next time.